This is Jeff Davis. Growing up in Ohio in the 1950s, Daryl Holly wanted to be a cowboy. By the late 1960s, he wanted to be a top-notch radio newsman. He rode into Houston in 1977 and got to be both, working at the iconic KIKK. He was not only part of the city's country music scene, but he was their go-to guy for breaking news for more than a decade. If it was burning up, blowing up, or being swept away in a hurricane, Daryl's reports kept listeners informed, and more often than not, were filed from somewhere deep into the story in the midst of police, firefighters, and other first responders. Whether it was Hurricane Alicia, the Gulf refinery explosion, the Challenger disaster, the pipeline blast near Brenham, Texas, or flooding on the Trinity River, Daryl found a way to get in, get a signal out, and get folks talking about the trouble at the scene. His cowboy credentials as a member of the KIKK morning crew included trail ride coverage for more than a decade, team roping and penning events at the Houston Farm and Ranch Club, and a collection of boots and western wear that made diehard kickers know he was the real deal. Leaving Texas in 1994 for Washington, D.C., and work with the Associated Press, Daryl never cut loose his Texas roots, returning to the Houston area to cover the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and the arrival of her sister Rita in 2005. His slight drawl and probing questions from his smooth baritone reminded old hands he was back. He was everywhere, nominated by his friends and fellow Texas broadcasters for 17 years covering news in the Lone Star State. He's still a kicker with a heart as big as Texas and bragging rights to match. Daryl Holly is now a 2015 inductee of the Texas Radio Hall of Fame.
Y'all know none of us move as quickly as we did in our 20s, okay? You know, I work with young people today, and, I'm always running into folks who were in the middle of their careers, and they're down in Washington, and they're from Houston or somewhere else in South Texas, and they turn to me and they say, "You're Daryl Holly? My parents listened to you when I was a little girl." But I love it because, quite frankly, Texas is home for me. It's still home for me, even though I've been gone a long time. And KIKK was extremely special for me. I got there as a kid myself, in my early 20s. And I got there because some people around the country decided to take a big chance on me. Egmont Sonderling at the old Sonderling Broadcast Company, Al Greenfield, Chris Collier, Buddy Clark, Chuck Wolf. These people kept me on the air doing this work at a time when doing that work for me would have been overnights and weekends and stuff, but I was on every day. Bill Figgenshoe, Nick Trigoni. Nick used to call New York when there was a big story going on. He'd say, "I'm sending my guy." And that's all they had. They had, by that time, one guy, and that was me. And we went everywhere, me and Andy Hudak there. Andy Hudak would keep me on the air and make sure I got a signal back. Larry Gallo would make sure I got my cast in when I was supposed to, or my report in. And I worked with people like Bill Figgenshoe and Charlie Oakes who knew when the music had to stop so that people could get informed. And people grew to like me. They grew to listen to me, and it meant a lot. I'd like to thank Jay Jones and Jack Harris, who ran all news talk stations here in town and hired the best possible staffs they could hire, which only made me ferociously competitive. And I'd get out there and I'd do my best to beat them, and sometimes they'd see me walking out of police lines when they were coming in to set up, and I'd get the story. Everything I did, everything I've done since has a lot to do with what I was able to do in Texas. AP colleagues in Dallas and Houston and Washington who made sure that, I could get a little extra mile out of my stories before I wound up going there to work for almost 20 years. And of course, family that was always understanding when I missed birthdays or left them home during a hurricane or flood by themselves to fend for themselves and showed up a couple of days later. All those folks are very important. My brother Dennis, who gave me a break in this business, way back in 1960s, the mid-60s. All those folks, very important. I like to tell people that all my life, in the 50s, I grew up wanting to be a cowboy like most of us males did at the time. In the 60s, I just wanted to be on the radio and a good newsman. And all that time, I really wanted to be a good friend. At KIKK, I was able to be all three. Thank you much.